Hello and welcome to our Feel Good, Do Good Work podcast series. Today we're joined by Quinton Manby, the Head of Internal Engagement at the Care Quality Commission. They are the independent regulator of all health and social care services in the UK. Quinton very kindly took part in the book Feel Good, Do Good Work, How Caring is Great for Business, that's recently been published. Quinton, thank you so much for taking part in that and for joining me again, and welcome on the podcast.
Well, thanks very much, Annette. It's great to be able to join you after contributing an interview pre-pandemic, and now be joining you again after all the changes that have been brought about in everybody's lives over the last 6 months or so.
Absolutely. It's really quite difficult to think that, around about a year ago, you and I were discussing your journey, your transformation journey, how you're engaging your colleagues. And then to think that really since then, this totally unexpected and tragic set of circumstances has occurred, which is just very surreal. And it's been a while since we spoke, and I wondered really, in the light of everything that's been happening, how have you been engaging colleagues since you're on the front line effectively of everything that's been going on?
Well, we're fortunate really in the Care Quality Commission because the majority of my colleagues are actually home-based. So we have about 70% of the CQC workforce who are inspectors, all work from home and have always worked from home ever since the organisation was set up. And so we were already investing in new technology to be able to make working from home and working remotely more effective. And we were fortunate in having rolled out the Microsoft Office 365 and Microsoft products in order to be able to engage a mobile workforce. And so we switched. Obviously, we have a crisis communications plan set up, and we've switched from what were largely online and written communication and face-to-face events, leaders events, and also large-scale managers and line managers events to doing everything on virtually.
Yes.
And it's been a very interesting, been incredibly demanding for me and my internal engagement team. I don't think I've ever worked so hard in all my life. And engagement obviously has been absolutely critical for the whole of the organisation, and so my colleagues as well in external communications have also been working flat out over the last 6 months as we change actually the way that we have carried out our work. We haven't obviously been able to go on site and do inspections, and we paused our program of inspection, a physical program of inspection, fairly early on in the pandemic. We are now and have continued to return to more limited and focused inspections, but we're having to do a lot of our work, and we're developing the systems and processes to do a lot more of our work virtually, in the same way that GPs are now giving people, video consultations. We are needing to talk to people who use services, their families and carers and advocates. We're needing to talk to them off-site and be able to use the technologies that we have in order to get their view of the services that they receive. And in a similar way, we have done exactly the same thing with colleagues. So we've switched from the chief executive providing a weekly blog to the chief executive doing all organization calls every week.
Wow, that's a lot, isn't it? Two a week, with all the preparation that's needed to go into that.
Yeah, it is quite a lot. And as well as that, to begin with, when the pandemic was on, we had 2 conversations with our leadership group, so the top 130 leaders, So we had those twice a week, so on
Mhm.
Mondays and Fridays. And then we had all colleague calls on Wednesdays and Thursdays in the middle of the week. So we've set up an infrastructure now of those calls, and we've retained it because it's had a massively beneficial impact on leadership communication. Our leadership communication scores, satisfaction with leadership communication has doubled.
Wow.
So, so it's gone from 40% to 80% satisfaction because everybody is in exactly the same situation. So regularly, my team are holding calls of between 1,500 and 2,000 people every week.
Mm.
People join. We using live events, which is a
Yes.
part of the Microsoft platform. Obviously, that doesn't allow people to ask questions in person. You still need to, you have to actually type in a
Yes.
chat function your questions. But we've developed a couple of things that I think have been really helpful in keeping engaging people and in um, keeping the right focus in those calls, which is we have had colleagues who have volunteered on the front line in health and care, because obviously we have quite a lot of nurses and
Yes.
doctors and other medical trained medical colleagues, staff who work with us. And so we've had them come on the calls and talk about their experiences of what it's like to work on the front line. We've
That's
also had some extraordinary colleagues who've done some fantastic um, volunteering, so volunteered for local social groups, through local churches, who have run food banks and who've organized things in their local community, come and talk.
fantastic.
Yeah, so it's been brilliant from that point of view, from being able to have that platform. And also the chief executive and the executive team in general have very much adopted an individual sort of focused response to the pandemic, in terms of what the ask has been of our colleagues. Obviously, we're here to make sure that people get safe services, and to make sure that we're on the side of people who use services. So we have continued to investigate and to monitor the quality of services throughout the period, and we have gone out on inspection, but there has been a focus around individuals having a discussion with their own line manager and just
Mhm.
sharing the circumstances in which they're living, because obviously people have had kids to look after.
Yeah.
With you've got people who've got dependents, and people who are shielding. There's a whole range of individual circumstances, and the focus has been very much on offer what you can do for you and for your team, and have a conversation with your line manager to say, this is how I can work. So we have people on inspection teams who might be shielding and aren't able to go out themselves, but of
Mhm.
course they can still support an inspection.
Yes.
And that has had a really good effect, I think, on people's perception of how the leadership is supporting them, but supporting them in what they want to do, which obviously is to look after the public.
Yeah.
So that has been good. Obviously, the sort of welfare, our overall well-being program has had to adjust, because some of it was built around communities of people that were office based. It's now obviously all become virtual, but
Mhm.
we have introduced quite there is now quite an extensive program of virtual events. So we have meditation sessions. We've had, can you believe it, virtual yoga, which
Fantastic.
don't even begin to explain how he described that. And also sharing it on the all colleague calls, sharing experiences of how teams have kept in contact with one another and supporting one another at what is, obviously quite a difficult
Difficult
period.
time. Are they using, as part of the suite of resources you were talking about that you've invested in from Microsoft? Are you using any internal social media platforms like Yammer or anything like that to get separate conversations going?
Yeah, we've got Yammer, so it's not yet integrated completely into Teams, but we use Yammer for the individual programs and for well-being. We have well-being groups set up in each of the different directorates, each of the
Mhm.
different departments, and they use Yammer within those groups. Yeah, Yammer's quite actively used. It's a bit, as I think I might have said to you before, it's a bit Marmite in the sense
Yes.
that some people really like it and some are not so keen. But it has got active use, especially in the social groups. So it is quite heavily used. Um, we haven't. We have also. We also use Teams quite extensively in setting up discussion forums and chats
Yeah.
within interest groups as well on Teams as well as on Yammer. And we have obviously we've tried to give people the opportunity as well to have conversations about the issues of the day. We've had really, as you can imagine, a very active discussion around Black Lives Matters.
Yeah.
That's been we've had some quite soul searching and open discussions around the experience of our colleagues, and so in creating sort of special calls and fora for people to be able to share their experiences
That's
in that
fantastic.
way.
Because of course, at the moment it's very topical, as it's Inclusion Week, isn't it? So
Yeah.
National Inclusion Week. So do you have
Yeah.
much planned for that?
Yeah, we've got so we've got Black Lives Matters. We've got colleagues who are coming to share their personal stories. That was a very powerful feature of a chat that was set up to talk about the impact on colleagues around what was happening in the States and also in the UK as well too. And so we've got colleagues who are coming to join the all colleague calls this week to talk about their lifetime experiences, basically as Black people in the UK, and we're also part of a Freedom to Speak Up network that's part of the National Health Service, and so it's Freedom to Speak Up Month as well too, and Inclusion Month. So we're connecting those things together in events that are obviously virtual events, but events that are happening this week. But it is very much through individuals coming along and sharing their stories, because we
Yeah.
found that that's much more engaging for people, and people appreciate that. We've
It's
had some
relatable, isn't it?
fantastic, yeah, we've had some fantastic um, contributions from people doing some extraordinary things. Really, it's amazing when you start to talk to your colleagues and give them, an opportunity to share their stories. It's quite humbling, really, the things that people have done over the last 6 months.
I think the thing is as well is, as you say, with everything moving online, it's a leveler, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because everybody's in the same position, no matter where you're placed within the organization, whether you're at executive level or grassroots level. Everybody can be affected by having dependents, schooling children while trying to do actually a heightened workload, as you said. And I remember you talking to me about your values, and that caring was one of the values, which of course
yeah.
is a fundamental proposition for the organization, as well as it being one of your values. Um, I mean, some of the examples that you've given just now show that that's manifested in through those sorts of activities. But how else have you been able to demonstrate caring within the organization, as opposed to what it does as a purpose?
Well, I think we throughout the chief executive Ian Trenholm has emphasised to colleagues that the judgments that we make in teams need to be based on our values. So where you're working with your team members to work out what you can and can't do. Part of that is wanting to support each other as a team, and caring being one of the values. But it's caring about doing the right thing, and caring about the wider impact in society on the work that
Yes.
we do as well. It obviously it's having empathy with colleagues, and that has been really important, and understanding and supporting people through the circumstances that they might be in. But it's also having those open conversations with people, so that it's fair, and that fairness is very important to colleagues. The idea, that everybody should be, integrity is important to people, and therefore, that you're contributing as much as you can in the circumstances, so that it's fair for the team as a whole. And obviously, excellence is about doing the best job you can in the circumstances that you find yourselves in. And teamwork has been part of it throughout. So it has been a very much, the emphasis has obviously very much been on having team discussions about how we're able to fulfill our purpose at the same time as being able to support each other. So it's been a combination, it's been a combination of those things. It's a challenge. I mean, it's not straightforward, and obviously, I'm sure that will have come across people for whom working at home and working in a virtual way is really quite challenging. And so that we have had some of those. We have some colleagues who deal with some very distressing calls from whistleblowers, or people that might be calling us because they're in distress in a care setting.
Mhm.
And and they're having to do that sometimes working with their children around their feet in the kitchen. And
Yeah.
so some of those circumstances that people are having to work in are very, very challenging. And so it's not easy for it hasn't been easy for everybody. And so we've tried to be as open as possible about the circumstances, or encourage people to be as open as possible about the circumstances that they're working in.
Yeah.
But it definitely doesn't suit everybody. We've definitely got colleagues who struggle with their mental health as a result
Yeah.
of the length of this, especially now that when we're looking at the prospect of it continuing for another 6 months. When it felt
Yeah.
temporary, it was
Yeah.
something you could always manage. But now that it's going on that much longer, I think we're reviewing our kind of circumstances, and just trying to encourage people to really keep an eye out for their colleagues, and look for the little signs that things are not quite right, and to encourage people to be in regular contact with one another, even if it's on chat or on messaging, just to make
Mhm.
sure that we stay in touch,
Yeah.
because it's easy to feel isolated, and it's easy to lose those human contacts, really, I think, when everybody's working from home.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Quentin, because I suppose really at the beginning of it, as you say, it felt quite temporary. So it's all quite new and fresh, and people look for routine, routine tasks, a routine structure, and to get into the habit of checking in on each other. But as soon as it becomes the norm and slightly more medium term, then that can be a danger period where you can forget those good habits. So it's definitely about keeping it front of mind. And I guess with you doing your regular calls as well, of course, the benefit of those, even if you do live events and you've got a chat based or Q&A based online forum to it, you can of course always get input from colleagues themselves as to what they suggest the organization should do to support it.
Yeah, and we do have our a variety of different staff networks. So we have networks for we have a disability network. We have a race equality network. We have an LGBT and trans network, and so all those networks are also an opportunity for people who are members to be able to feed back, and they do share things with us as well too on the all colleague calls. So we do make an effort to try and stay in touch with all the networks, especially in the internal engagement team. And we have a reference group as well too that we're talking to on a month, we bring people together, cross section of people across the organisation together on a monthly basis to just talk about how engagement is going and what the mood is there. And the
Mm.
staff, our staff forum particularly good, obviously trade union colleagues as well too, but the staff forum as well too will play back generally what the mood is and how people are feeling. And we've run a number of pulse surveys as well too, and the next one that we're running has got a specific set of questions. One, the headline question is about well-being and how people are feeling at the moment. And obviously it's a snapshot, but that's an explicit question in the next staff pulse survey, which sets out a series of responses based on how people are feeling, what might be causing them to feel isolated or concerned. So we should have some good, some good metrics
Yeah.
on that we can then continue to follow up in smaller groups.
It's definitely, I mean, it is challenging for everyone, but speaking as a fellow internal communicator, it's really been quite a unique and challenging experience, hasn't it, this year? And but I think, alongside the inevitable tragedy and difficulties, there are lots of positives to be drawn out of it, because you probably do find more efficient, effective ways to connect, which, yeah, I think early on you mentioned accelerating some of these technologies. So the fact that these have been accelerated and adopted and embraced is a really good thing, I think.
Yeah, I think it is. I think also you don't, until you're really pushed to do it, sometimes you don't try things out soon enough. And
Mm,
we've been really pushed into. I mean, I was very nervous about the idea of holding a call that potentially 3,000 people could
mm,
join. I must admit, I've
yeah,
never produced anything before, so you just have to do these things cold and just run with it. And
yeah,
people are very forgiving when they know that the intention behind it is to do
mm,
something that's of benefit to the community of people. So
yeah,
it's that has been good. And also because we've learned those things, we've been able to replicate them for other bits of what we do internally, other bits of business as well too. So things that we've used live events for, we now use them more regularly for smaller groups, for directorates to hold their calls as well, and also for launching some of the new ways of carrying out our regulatory work that we've had to adopt.
yeah,
We've used them for business, for direct business, rather than just as a communications tool. So, and also we've used them to connect with audiences externally as well. So we started out using live events to talk to our colleagues, but then we extended that out, and we've been using that Microsoft platform to engage the public and providers of health and social care services throughout the pandemic on how we're developing the way that we regulate, and we've actually managed to reach much larger groups of people than we would have done had we been just relying on face-to-face events,
mm,
which is the
yeah.
generally the way that we engage with the public.
Yeah, I mean, and the other side of that is, as well as being able to embrace a wider audience, you're doing it more sustainably and from a time efficiency point of view, because of course,
Yeah.
alongside the other kind of key issues facing us at the moment, Brexit, we won't go into that, but the whole climate debate reality, I think of the fact we're all in that together, we've all got our parts to play. Actually, this has been such a helpful set of circumstances in terms of the technology we're adopting to just play our part in contributing to a better climate approach.
Yes, definitely. And I think, like a lot of organisations, we're rethinking now our whole strategy in terms of our estate, and whether or not what we use our offices for, and how much travel we do between offices. It's had a beneficial effect from the point of view that everybody is on the same everybody's in a meeting on the same basis. Whereas
Mm.
previously, you'd often have people who were in an office getting together in for a meeting, and they would all be there face to face with somebody connected in, and a bit like a second class citizen to some
Mm. Of
extent,
course,
because they
yeah.
were, yeah. But whereas now everybody's in the same. It has exactly the same experience. So like as you were saying, it's a leveler, and that makes it a better experience, and it means also that the techniques that you develop to manage those types of interactions, they get better, and so the meetings themselves improve in terms of their value. And so you can extend, you in the circumstances when you're forced into them, then you do work out how to do breakouts, how to do individual, sort of contributions, how to make the best, of the that the technology has to offer. And that has a beneficial effect then, because it means that it is it, we will challenge people, I think, traveling, a lot for meetings, when in fact it makes much more sense if you've got colleagues who are always going to be joining virtually anyway. It makes much more sense for everybody to be in that. To be doing that the same. I mean, I think the idea of traveling into an office to sit at a desk and just do work from your desk will just it'll be quite odd. And we're definitely looking at moving a larger number of colleagues. I mean, already the majority of us were home based, but I think if we will offer that opportunity to more people, and that will change how we use our offices
Yeah.
quite significantly.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's the element of collaboration. So that's clearly something that it is beneficial to meet for that, although not impossible and can be effective online. But I suppose, yeah, it's just trying to strike a balance when you look at what you'll keep and what you might not keep from
Mm.
this set of circumstances when things return to whatever the situation is going to be. But I suppose it's a base. There is a basic human need to be connected face to face and physically. So it's going to be interesting how one strikes the balance with that going forward.
Yes, it will be, and it's quite interesting to see the reaction of people who have always been home based to the people who used to work in offices. So
Mm.
for me, as I used to work in an office, I used to really enjoy, and still do, obviously, being with colleagues in the office and being able to just sort of chat. I used to get a lot of my work done with the chief executive making tea.
Mm.
So I'd time it to go and make a cup of tea at the same time as him, and then you could just do, you could pick up a
Oh,
couple of things, and the senior team as well too. If I
yeah.
want to talk to one of the chief inspectors, because there's never any time in their diaries,
Mm.
you can often catch them having a cup of tea and just quickly deal with something. Now that none of those things are possible now.
Mm.
So I think for people who are used to working in offices, it's been quite an adjustment. Whereas I was talking to one of my uh, sort of deputy chief inspector colleagues, and she was just saying, I was saying that I missed it, and I missed the office environment. I missed the ability to be able to just go around, have a chat to people, get away from my desk,
Mm.
and just sort of socialize and pick things up that way. Because internal communications, obviously, that's a lot of
Yeah.
the time, ear to the ground is what you're there to do, basically, and so you can get a lot of things done in that way. But she was just saying, well, that's always been my reality. I was always coming into an office for a particular meeting, and I might bump into people, but very infrequent for me. So I don't miss the offices,
Mm.
because it's not really been my environment. My environment is home, and then I come
Yeah.
in. And so it's interesting. It is
Yeah.
interesting to share those experiences with people. Depends to some extent, what you were used to before the pandemic. But
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, no, I think you're sorry. I think you're absolutely right. And I think although that can beg the other issue of when everything is virtual, it's where do you draw the line and create the boundaries from the beginning of the day to the end of the day? Because I guess people are still trying to meet later in the evening to try and fit things in, and it comes back to that well-being piece about setting boundaries and working effectively so that you don't burn out, particularly if this is going to go on for another 6 months.
Yeah, I think that is a real challenge. I think differentiating between when you're a homework, and homework is always, we've got lots of information about homeworking already on our intranet and had prior to the pandemic, because we have such a large community of people working from home, and they report all those issues around isolation, but also not being able to make the distinction between uh, between home time and work time.
Yeah,
And so and that has proved a challenge for people. I think people have found it quite difficult to switch off. And so we have been talking to people about, um, about just little techniques for stepping up and getting away from your computer, from trying to make a clear distinction between home and work time. And because also, if when it was severe lockdown there and people weren't going out, then it does make it doubly difficult. So I think that has been sort of one of the points that we've picked up in some of our well-being discussions, certainly.
well, Quinton, thank you ever so much for taking the time to talk to me again. I really appreciate it, and I do hope that people listening will find what you said very useful. I certainly have, and I think it sounds fantastic what you've all been doing this year and really working flat out. So um, thank you very much for joining me, and stay safe and well, and appreciate your help with the book again.
Okay, thanks very much. It was good talking to you, Annette.
You too.